Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is having a great evening, and welcome back to week 2 of National Homeownership Month series. I am Lauren Butler. I am a licensed Pennsylvania real estate agent, and I am here to talk about and celebrate Home Ownership Month all month, right? So as you may know, if you were able to join or if you were able to see the recording of my previous live, last week we discussed the financial readiness of how to prepare for home ownership. So this week, today, we are going to walk through the entire home buying process from start to finish, right? So if you've ever wondered, what happens after you purchase a home, this session is definitely for you because we are going to talk about some really, really good things and key components to consider. So before we begin, all right, and even if you don't feel comfortable doing it, but if you want to, in the comments below, if you could, let me know if you are a first-time home buyer, if you have ever purchased a home, and if you really want to, and you don't have to, once again, but if you would, tell me what some of your fears or some of your concerns are in regards to becoming a homeowner and embarking on this journey. Because a lot of times, I meet people and they just assume that they can't afford to purchase a home. They make excuses of, the economy, this, that. But you never know until you try or until you at least have just a conversation with a real estate agent and or a lender. Before we get started, remember if you would like today's hi Yana. If you would like today's ebook, let me know, comment home below, and if you want to, you can personal message me and I will send you a copy of the ebook, which is just a very simple guide in regards to keeping you accountable, keeping you on track of all of the things that you need to do while you're trying to begin the journey of purchasing a home. So the very first topic that we're going to get into, we are going to talk about the pre-approval, okay, and why it is so important to make sure that you have your pre-approval and how it will guide you in regards to getting to the next level, which is searching for a property. So the first step is getting with a lender. You have your real estate agent, and then you get your lender as well too. So when you get your pre-approval, the purpose of the pre-approval is to help you understand how much you may qualify for a home. Okay, it will also identify what your monthly payment will be in regards to your mortgage. And then in addition to that, you also want to identify what loan programs you may be eligible to obtain. It goes back to that conversation that I say, a lot of times people think they need this obscene amount of money to put down on a home. However, depending on your finances, depending on everything that you have going on, it's up to not only your real estate agent, but also your lender, most importantly, to be able to identify what you need specifically to be able to succeed on getting to the closing table and becoming a homeowner. And then in addition to that, having the pre-approval already made, ready to go, it really helps you, it helps strengthens your ability to submit an offer on a home. Okay, and also you'll have competition in some cases towards other buyers. So that's really important to be able to have, okay? So the next step would be, after you get your pre-approval letter and you see how much you've been pre-approved for, the next step is making sure that you're building your search for your home. You definitely have to strategize. And there's some things that I want, people to consider when they are purchasing a home, because it's more than just buying a home, okay? So you need to think about what your budget will be, where you would prefer to live. You want to think about the must-haves, okay? Everyone has a must-have in regards to purchasing a home. You need to identify what that is, okay? You also need to identify what are some of the nice-to-have features of the home, okay? Because no home is going to be perfect, okay, unless you're doing new construction, and you are telling the builder exactly how you want things set up. But if you are purchasing a home that has already been built, has been lived in, everyone lives in, especially if they lived in the home for a while, they are going, most homes are not just built to live in, but the people that live in it want it to look a certain way, because it's their home until they sell it to whoever the new owner will be, right? And then you want to think about your long-term goals. Okay, what is the long-term goal, and what is the long-term vision of what you have in mind for the purpose of purchasing a home? Okay. In addition to that, you need to ask yourself, do I need more space? Look at where you are currently living, whether that be actually in a home or if you're renting an apartment. Do you need more space? Do I want a shorter commute to work? Right? Because that's something to consider. It's more than just purchasing a home, because not only does it cost to live in a home and to pay for a mortgage and all of those things, but there's utilities, right? You have to travel. So that's definitely something that you want to consider. In regards to the location as well, too, you want to think, if you have a family and you have, children that are in elementary school, junior high school, or high school, you definitely want to consider for them, take a look at the school district, just read some reviews, get familiar with it. If you're not, not all reviews that, appear to be bad are bad, but you have to be able to identify those things for you. And most importantly, you need to identify if that school district is going to work well for what your children need. And then in regards to that, you also need to consider, are you looking for a forever home? Or are you just looking for a starter home or a for right now home? Because not everyone who purchases their first home, that's not always going to be your home forever. So that's definitely something you want to consider. And guess what? We all are in different seasons of our lives. So sometimes people do buy a home and they think it's going to be their forever home, but then they realize, different things happen in life where you're growing your family and you're like, like I need to purchase a bigger home. So just consider those things as well too. So in the comments, I want you to tell me what your absolute must-have is in a home. It can be from anything from you absolutely need a finished basement, you absolutely need a pool, or you absolutely need a two-car garage. What is your absolute must-have? Because like I said, that's important for you to identify. Or maybe you want a library, or a special room for you to be able to do, have an office or do yoga or things of that nature. So it's all up to what your home needs to reflect your lifestyle as well too when you are considering purchasing a home. Okay, so then the next step is we've gone through all of that. We've identified, you've explained, and you've been able to articulate to your real estate agent, listen, these are my must-haves. These are features that I'm willing to either have, not have. This is the location. I looked into the school district. Once you're able to articulate that all to your real estate agent, which you absolutely need to identify, because that's the best way that your real estate agent is going to be able to help you. And they have to listen to all of those things. And so when they're looking for a property for you, they have all of those things to consider. Okay. And it should, as a team, okay, you both should be able to identify and get a property. And then the next step would be submitting an offer. Okay. So what happens is that you find a home, you're ready to submit an offer. So your realtor is going to prepare an offer. We're then going to go through that offer before we submit it to the seller side. Okay. Once the seller sees it, and the contract is called an agreement of sale. Once the agreement of sale is reviewed by the seller, after your buyer's agent submits it, the seller reviews it. The agent obviously goes through it with their seller. All parties agree upon it. We execute it. Okay. After that, the next step will be that net negotiations may have to occur. You will have to provide an earnest money deposit. And in regards to negotiations may occurring, That also has to do with the next step, which is home inspections. Okay, so those are the three components of the beginning stages of what happens after you go under agreement with the seller, with both the seller and the buyer agreeing to the agreement of sale. Okay, so, and other things to also consider is that the lowest offer is not always accepted. Okay, it's not always accepted in some cases. This goes back to location. This goes back to who the seller is. We don't know who the seller is, but the seller might envision a certain amount and what they believe their home is worth. Okay, and maybe that home just doesn't work for you as a buyer in regards to having to go through certain negotiations. Okay, and then also remember too that strong terms can be just as important as the price, right? So even if you were to necessarily lowball, go lower or lowball the original listed price of the home, if you have strong terms, you have a possibility of your offer being accepted. But once again, it just goes back to who the seller is, what their expectations are, and there's nothing, there's only but so much you can do, and it just goes back into the negotiations of making sure that both parties can come to an agreement, and then we can continue the process. So your offer is accepted, okay, and then here comes the home inspection. I advise all of my clients to always get a home inspection, even if you are purchasing new construction. You should definitely also get a home inspection completed. You want to be able to get ahead of anything that may be wrong in the home that, your eye just cannot catch. We're not home inspectors. We can't see everything. All we really can see is what's obvious on the surface. So a home inspection is definitely important. And like I said, it really can save you time, energy, and monies in regards to anything that may pop up, okay? And then in addition to that, usually home inspections are done within 10 days of going under contract, unless there's, some other terms that are different from that. And then within that time, the appraiser comes out to identify what the value of the home is for the lender. So an appraisal, so when you get a loan from a bank and or from a lender, they send an appraiser out because they want to make sure that what we offered on the home, that the value aligns with what the market value of the property. They want to make sure that the market value and the actual value of what the home was listed for aligns with one another. So the lender requires an appraisal to be done anytime you are borrowing money from a bank. Okay. And then the inspections, the home inspections, they protect the buyers. Okay. They protect them from not having any surprises. And then lastly, you never want to skip your due diligence. Okay. Never ever skip your due diligence. This process, once you go under agreement of sale, and especially after the home inspection, it can move fairly quickly. Okay. You want to make sure that you stay aligned the entire time while you are under contract. You want to make sure that you're not, switching accounts or, doing anything that could mess anything up, because you are under agreement, and, the lender is still going to be, checking out to make sure that you are doing everything that you're supposed to be doing. So then once we get through all of that, we get through the home inspection, there are negotiations that either can happen or don't have to happen. It just all depends on and I could go into that, and I can give you so many scenarios on what happens once the home inspection report comes back. However, like I said, it's different in every case, right? Negotiations happen, credits happen, and sometimes, parties just can't come to terms with what, each side needs. But like I said, everything, every transaction is different. So we get through that. We agree. We got through the home inspection. We got the appraisal back. The value of the home came back. So we're all good as far as that. So then we go to the closing process. Okay. And so with the closing process, the final stage is the final mortgage approval. Yes, the final mortgage approval. The mortgage company, the underwriter, they rerun everything to make sure that you have not done anything crazy, okay? You haven't ran up a credit card, or you haven't missed a car note payment, that your credit has stayed the same from the beginning when they provided you with the pre-approval all the way up to the very end, which is usually 72 to 48 hours beforehand. But within that week of closing, they are definitely doing their due diligence to make sure nothing crazy, even if making sure that you haven't lost your job. I mean, they look at everything. So it's a very, very important time, anywhere from 30 to 45 to 60 days, all depending on the terms of when your closing is going to occur, that you stay on track and you stay diligent about making sure that everything stays aligned, okay? Because that's a crazy, horrible feeling. Also, your final walkthrough of the property will occur with your real estate agent. And so for me, I like to do the final walkthrough at least 24 to 48 hours, depending on everyone's schedule, prior to closing. And this is just to ensure there's no leaks, there's no surprises, doors weren't left open, windows weren't broken. I mean, you want to look at everything. The water's still running, the electric is still going. Make sure, homeowners, that you do not shut the electric off prior to closing, okay? And then with buyers, your real estate agent and you also should know that you have to get everything, scheduled to be switched over once closing occurs. Okay, and you can schedule that in advance. You don't have to do it. You don't have to wait till that actual day or anything like that. Or, the day that you call, please don't say, I want to get this put in my name. Make sure that you identify on the phone that, I'm calling today. This is my information. However, I want everything to be scheduled to be switched over on the day of your closing. Okay. And then in addition to that, for the final, part of closing, you sign the documents. You sign your final documents. Buyers, you have anywhere from 150 to 200 pages that you have to sign, but I promise you it is going to be all worth it. But it can feel very overwhelming. You're going to be signing loan documents. You're going to be signing title documents, and everything is going to be explained to you while you're going through each document. So it's not like you'll be blindsided or anything like that. It can be overwhelming, but I'm telling you, it is definitely, definitely worth it. And then you are going to receive your keys from the other side, and that is when the true celebration happens and you are officially a homeowner. Okay. So yeah, I mean, that's the majority of the key things that you need to consider. And like I said, things, are a lot, can be more detailed. Every deal is different, but if you stick to those key components of everything, as far as from start to finish, you should be good. Nothing is always smooth. Some things, take some time. But like I said, with the right team of people around you and supporting you, you definitely will get through the process. You just have to make sure that you are able to work with people that support you and that will fight for you and that will take a stand for you, just depending on whatever may be occurring in that deal. So that is a wrap up for week 2. Thank you for those who have joined me. So before next week's session, which will be week 3, okay, of Homeownership Month, I want you guys to meet with a lender. I want you to create your own home wish list. Okay, manifest it, write it down. I'm big on believing if I write things down and just, looking at it over and over again, I truly believe that, you can manifest anything that you want in regards to whatever you may want. But in this case, we're talking about a home. Determine your ideal monthly payment. Okay. And like I said, you'll be able to identify that once you get pre-approved and you have a pre-approval in front of you. And please keep in mind that even if you get approved for $350,000, that does not mean that the overall cost per month is going to work for you. And you don't want to purchase something that is $350,000 because there are other fees that come into play, and you have to balance out all of the numbers, right? You have to also consider the taxes, the cost of home insurance. You have to consider, all of the school tax, property tax. So you definitely want to find something that's at least, 10 grand to 25 grand under what you have been pre-approved with. And you also have to look at what you can afford just with your mortgage alone, and not considering any utilities or anything, but you need to make sure and feel comfortable with the monthly amount for your mortgage. Okay. And then also start researching neighborhoods. Okay. What neighborhood do you want to live in? Are you the type of person that you like living somewhere where it's convenient and you want to walk, and you want to be able to be near restaurants? Maybe you want to be like in a Manayunk, or you want to be in a Narberth, or, you want to be, in King of Prussia, and, towns like that, or Phoenixville, or maybe you want to be in the city near University City, or you want to be, closer to downtown Philly, in Center City. So you want to identify those things, or maybe you want to be in a rural area. But whatever it is, make sure that you definitely research the neighborhood, research the school district, and just try to familiarize yourself if you're not, really sure of the area that you're considering and wanting to purchase. And so with that being said, thank you for joining me. Once again, comment home below if you would like a copy of my home buying playbook. And if you are considering purchasing, in the next 6 months, within this year, 3 years, 5 years, all you have to do is just start a conversation, and I'm more than happy to provide you with a complimentary buyer strategy session. I love to talk about real estate. I love, to be able to brainstorm with people, and I love to hear about people's goals. So that is something that I'm really passionate about. So I have no problem just having a conversation with you and answering any questions, and to ultimately be a resource to you. Okay, that's the main goal, to be a resource to you and be able to provide you with anything that you may need. And so if you're, like I said, if you're considering, reach out to me. And then for next week, which will be week 3 of Homeownership Month, we are going to be talking, this is going to be for the homeowners, the current homeowners, okay? And we're going to talk about how to sell successfully and maximize your property's value. All right, so that's going to be a really good session. And even if you have not purchased and you're not a homeowner, you should still consider, just tapping in and listening to me. And even if you don't, come on my live, definitely, look at the video and think about it, because, in the future, you never know what's going to happen in the future. And if you're able to have some type of knowledge about the process, you're already 10 steps ahead. All right. So once again, thank you for joining. I hope everyone has a great evening and a great weekend. Make sure you stay cool too, because it is supposed to be really, really hot. Crank up your air conditioner, all of that. And have a wonderful evening.